Yeah, so Hakeem Jeffries, aka Timu Obama, Walmart Obama, Discount Rack Obama himself, and Democrat leadership, they continue to go against the will of the American people. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about the recent bombshell polling that came out showing a clear majority of Americans across party lines, no matter Democrat or Republican or independent, support some form of basic measure to ensure fair and secure elections. But not Hakeem Jeffries, ladies and gentlemen. And I've said this before, modern Democrats aren't just out of step with Republicans on this issue, they're increasingly out of step with their own base. And so when Jeffries gets confronted with these polling numbers, the response isn't about finding some sort of common ground or listening to the voters. It's just about deflection. And in my view, that's because admitting the obvious that voter ID is widely supported undercuts a narrative they don't want to let go. As always, guys, smash that thumbs up button. That's the very best way. Lets me know you like the video, and subscribe to stay locked in for future content. Let's get into it. And so first, let's jump into a couple of the responses Democrats have come up with to justify and validate not choosing to actually work with Republicans and passing voter ID with the SAVE Act. Take a listen.
The SAVE Act is expected to be brought this week to the floor for a vote. Do you support voter ID for elections?
Well, it depends on what you mean by voter ID. When you want to say that everyone has to produce a birth certificate, including women whose married names are not on their birth certificates, that creates a real problem for me.
Well, isn't that just one of the first steps in getting married is getting a new ID?
Actually, it's not getting a new birth certificate, because part of what the SAVE Act does is it says most driver's licenses around the country won't work as an ID. And that creates a terrible problem.
But you need an ID to do just about anything in America. Shouldn't you need one to vote in
You don't need
elections?
a birth certificate. I hope you know that.
Jess, there's a new Pew Research poll that 95% of Republicans, but also 71% of Democrats like this idea. So why do you not?
It's Jim Crow 2.0. And I called it Jim Crow 2.0, and the right wing went nuts all over the internet. That's because they know it's true. What they're trying to do here is the same thing that was done in the South for decades to prevent people of color from voting. For instance, if you change, you're a woman who got married and changed your last name, you won't be able to show ID and you'll be discriminated against. If you can't find a birth certificate or a proper ID, you'll be discriminated against. This is vicious and nasty. And I said to our Republican colleagues, it will not pass the Senate. You will not get a single Democratic vote in the Senate. We're not reviving Jim Crow all over the country. And when the American people hear what exactly it is doing and what its intent is doing, they're going to be against it as well.
Leader Jeffries, you recently stated that requiring proof of citizenship to vote in elections is voter suppression. Can you explain how requiring proof of ID is voter suppression?
That's not a statement that I ever made.
You sure about that?
Then you should have brought the SAVE Act, which is a voter suppression bill that we strongly oppose, to the floor.
You said that the SAVE Act is not going to pass the House, but a vast majority of Americans, including 70% of Democrats, do support having voter ID requirements. So are Democrats on the wrong side of an issue with so much support? What's the path forward for Democrats here?
Republicans are clearly on the wrong side of every single issue.
What's so fascinating about listening to Democrats make excuses is the way they talk down to the American people, ladies and gentlemen. They frame it like they're saving us from something, as if they know what's best. And everyone else should just sit down, shut up, and listen. And so let's just say, for the sake of argument, that everything they're claiming is true. Birth certificates, passports, documentation, whatever they say could turn this into Jim Crow 2.0, fine. It's all legit. It's all factual. Then here's a simple question. Why not figure out how to make it work? If you truly believe voter ID creates challenges, then your job as lawmakers should be to solve those problems, not use them as an excuse to block election integrity altogether, especially on something a vast majority of Americans agree is necessary. Put measures in place, create safeguards, make sure that Americans aren't left out while still ensuring elections are fair and trusted. Because they clearly know what the supposed roadblocks are. We understand that. So, where are the solutions? Instead, Congress would rather waste time, posture, and do as little as possible while pretending that inaction somehow makes them more virtuous. And that's the real frustration here. Not the debate, but the refusal to actually do the work for the American people. But now let me take you to the clip of Hakeem Jeffries after he was confronted with those polling numbers and how he responded. Take a listen.
I want to turn to a big debate about elections. The president said this week that, or this past week, that he wanted to nationalize elections at the White House and on Capitol Hill. They say that what they mean legislatively is pushing what they call the SAVE Act, which would mandate Americans show proof of citizenship like a birth certificate and also potentially more information about their registration to vote. Now, I understand you don't support things like a passport, for example, but requiring basic ID in order to vote is really popular. A Pew poll from a few months ago showed 83% of Americans, including 71% of your fellow Democrats, support requiring an ID to vote. Why are they wrong?
I haven't said that they're wrong. We know that states are the ones who are empowered to conduct elections, and every state should be allowed to decide the best way to proceed to ensure that there's a free and fair election. Here in New York, there are, in fact, voter identification requirements. The question is that what Republicans are trying to do is to engage in clear and blatant voter suppression. They know that if there's a free and fair election in November, they're going to lose. In fact, Republicans have been losing every single election since Donald Trump was sworn in January of last year, including most recently decisively in Texas, and of course, losing all across the country, up and down the ballot in the November off-year elections in places like New Jersey or Virginia or New York.
Yeah, and they've been losing. I mean, Virginia is a good example. They have a requirement to show your ID, and Democrats won very, very handily across the way. So why not maybe even just take that off the table and say, okay, maybe not a passport or birth certificate, but show ID?
Well, first of all, every state is empowered to be able to make the decision on their own, and we completely and totally support that. What Donald Trump wants to do is try to nationalize the election. Translation, steal it.
And so it's interesting because Hakeem Jeffries seems to be very concerned about nationalized elections and elections being stolen. And I wonder exactly what he had to say back in 2021. I mean, I got a feeling I know what he probably did say as far as things go, which probably wasn't much in disagreement with what Joe Biden wanted to do, which was, yes, nationalize the elections. And so let me just take you through this article briefly and kind of sums up exactly what the Biden administration attempted to do when he took office back in 2021. As the article states, nationalizing elections is a very bad idea, as it was when Democrats tried it. And so let's just go through what this article says. When Joe Biden entered office with the Democratic majorities in both the houses of Congress in 2021, the Democrats insisted that their first priority would be to nationalize American election administration. The so-called For the People Act was H.R. 1 and S1 in the 117th Congress. In the immediate wake of a crisis of confidence in our election system created by a president who refused to accept his loss of a close election, as they're referring to President Trump at that time, and kind of ironic, now we have all this information coming out about Georgia and the questionable fraud and things going on there, and we'll find out more about that. But I digress. Let's continue. The Democrats sought to have an exceptionally narrow Democratic majority in Washington, take over key election administration rulings in every state, and impose new and often looser rules involving voter registration, ID requirements, eligibility, ballot harvesting, early voting, drop boxes, mail-in voting, locations and hours of polling stations, voting by felons, campaign donations, and more. And so all of that, yes, was brought to you by the Democrat Party, basically saying we want it to be a free-for-all to get who we want to vote to be able to vote with as little guardrails as possible. And the article goes on to say, thankfully, the filibuster held, and not for the first or last time, it saved us from a disastrous partisan mistake.
And we're not going to let it happen. We stopped them in terms of their gerrymandering efforts, where they were going to try to redraw congressional maps in red states throughout the nation, not expect Democrats to respond forcefully and try to rig the midterms. They failed. We've stopped Donald Trump from being able to federalize the National Guard, which we believe was probably part of some toxic attempt to unleash troops on American cities all across the nation and intimidate people from voting. And we're going to stop him from nationalizing the election. This is going to be a free and fair election. It's going to be conducted like every other election, where states and localities have the ability to administer the laws.
Ultimately, this one is on Republicans, period. They need to get this done. John Thune needs to get this done. No excuses. Because unlike when Democrats tried to nationalize elections, if that's what they want to try to call this, what Trump is doing, there is an actually legit reason for this change, unlike when the Democrats wanted to. They wanted to open the floodgates and let anyone vote with no safeguards. This is about actually restoring election integrity. That's the difference. And this is where Republicans continue to disappoint. They don't press the issue hard enough. They hesitate, they stall, they let Democrats control the narrative instead of forcing a vote and making people take a position. And with the midterms right around the corner, the question got to be asked, what has Congress done? I mean, the president has taken action. He's moved aggressively, but Congress, not so much. And so when the midterms come and go, and if Republicans happen to find themselves back in the minority in one or both chambers, it won't be a mystery why. It'll be because they didn't get the job done when they had the chance. And that's on them. But now let me hear from you. Drop your comments down below. As always, smash that thumbs up button. That lets me know you like the video. Subscribe to the channel for more. And as always, until next time.